Ron.
Present.
Bruce. He's not online.
Whoops. Thanks, Mike.
Yeah, hold on.
Bruce. Bruce.
Mr. Paulson, are you on there?
You have to unmute your mic, Bruce.
I just did.
There you go.
There you go.
Dawn. No. Troy.
Here.
Troy. Okay, thanks. Jesse.
Here.
Tweed.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
So
So-
Mr. Schuman can sit in for
For
Dawn.
Dawn, yep.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Statement of committee and hearing procedures. The full statement of this committee and the hearing procedure document, including directions for the individuals wishing to speak at a public hearing to be conducted at this zoning committee meeting, are available in front of this room next to the agenda for today's meeting. The statement of committee and public procedure document is hereby incorporated into the record for this committee meeting. Statement of hearing notice. Any public hearing conducted at today's committee meeting has been published as a Class 2 notice in accordance with Chapter 985 of the Wisconsin statutes in the Sawyer County Record and the Sawyer County Gazette and posted. I need approval of the October 16th, 2020 minutes.
Ron, this is Bruce. I make a motion to approve the minutes.
This is
Okay,
Troy,
we have
I'll
a
second.
We have a motion and a second on the floor to approve the October 16th, 2020 minutes. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Public comment. Please note, comment time is intended for the general public comments, not comments related to a specific application before this committee. Each agenda item requiring a public hearing will have its public hearing conducted just prior to the application being considered by this committee. If you wish to speak on a specific agenda item, we encourage you to hold your comments until that specific public hearing. Okay.
I don't see any hands raised for public comment.
Okay. So then we'll just go right into the rezone applications.
Yes. We have one rezone application, public hearing, the town of Coudray, rezone 20-008, owner Bruce Jasic, agent, town of Coudray Volunteer Fire Department. Part of the southeast one quarter, the southwest one quarter, and part of the southwest one quarter to the southeast one quarter. Section 3, Township 38 North, Range 8 West, parcel 004-838-03-3404, which is consisting of 0.89 acres of the total 22.85 acres, and part of the northeast one quarter, the northwest one quarter, Section 10, Township 38 North, Range 8 West, parcel 004-338, 102101, 4.94 acres of the total 36.94. Both parcels are zoned residential, recreational 2, and agricultural 1. Purpose of the request is to rezone the entirety of the of that land to agricultural 1 for a total of 5.83 acres to be rezoned for the Ag 1, and then to apply for conditional use permit to comply with section 17.4, parent B, parent 3, which would be for a fire department or a fire station. As per the staff report, Purpose of this request is to rezone to agricultural 1 and then apply for conditional use permit for a fire station. The applicants are requesting to rezone a total of 5.83 total acres from the 2 separate lots of, consisting of RR2 and A1 property. With the proposed rezone, the applicant or agent, the Coudray Volunteer Fire Department, would then apply for that conditional use permit in the Ag1 zone district to install an approximately 50 by 56 fire department. The proposed rezone would result in conforming lot dimensional requirements, and a new survey map would need to be recorded for this new parcel. Included with the additional maps in this packet, the nearest A1 zone property in relation to this is immediately across the State Highway 70 from this property. There would be no plans for any type of agricultural production on this lot. The future land use map for the town of Coudray within the town comprehensive plan shows this area as a mix between agricultural and forest residential. This area is shown on the NRCS web soil survey, would not be lands indicated as prime farmlands. Per the town of Coudray, motion was approved, signed Pill Mile Supervisor Jeffrey Honey Supervisor. No additional comments, signed Charlie Warner, Town Clerk. There were 2 opinion letters sent out. Neither of those were returned. That is all.
Okay. Thank you, Jay. All right, I need a motion to go into public hearing for the town of Coudray rezone number 20-008. Okay, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to go into public hearing. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All
Aye.
opposed? Whoops, I better slow down for her. Motion carries. Okay, who's here to represent the town of Coudray? Is that you, Mr. Bassett? Yes, sir. Okay.
Jim Bassett, Coudray. I suspect everybody in this room knows what's been going on the last few years with the town of Coudray, village of Coudray and the fire department. Basically, the Coudray Volunteer Fire Department Incorporated is literally starting over from scratch. If it wasn't for the town of Coudray buying us a $10,000 engine that's 32 years old, we wouldn't even be here now. But we need a building. And we've looked at properties, looked at accompanying the town at the recycling center and on a piece of property close by, which was not big enough and cost prohibitive. But we found this piece of property owned by Mr. Jasic, and it is quite ideal. Number one, Mr. Jasic is giving us that property for, and I'm not a real estate agent, but probably half of what that property's worth. It has several hundred feet of river frontage going with it. I mean, it's a nice piece of property. That's asset number one. Number two, access. We would have a fire department on a main highway. The main highways in Sawyer County, 2770. The highways are one of the first things that get plowed out when we have a snow. Access to get our trucks on the road are important for any emergency services. Another benefit for it. Water. Water in any way, shape, or manner is valuable to a fire department. We haven't gotten so far yet as to look at how to get water out of the river, if we can get water out of the river, put in a dry hydrant, whatever. We are not there yet, but it's a valuable asset to have on that piece of property. And the land is clear. It's a horse pasture. Part of it is a horse pasture right now. We wouldn't have to have the expense of cutting down trees and getting machinery to knock down or knock out stumps, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And this ability for us to purchase this property from Mr. Jasic depends upon the ability to have this land rezoned and then get the conditional use permit, which would mean a lot to the Coudray area. Now, this piece of property at this point is been rezoned back in 1993 to about 1995, Sawyer County went through a comprehensive land use redoing, readjusted, whatever. This land was agriculture. At that time, it was agriculture, and they turned it over to residential recreation 2. Here it is a quarter of a century later, and it's still agricultural land. There's pigs in the barn. Well, last I knew there was pigs in the barn. You don't see them. And there's horses in the pasture. Part of that pasture is going to be the land that the Coudray Fire Department buys. Anyhow, that comprehensive replan has cost zoning over the years a lot of headaches because people didn't understand it was rezoned, and they come to zoning and had it all rezoned, et cetera, et cetera. And if it would have stayed as it was, a true use of the land, agricultural, not residential 2, we wouldn't have to spend so much money to get the value, to get the property, spend the money to get the rezone change. And having said that, I hope you guys see this as I do, and zoning has in the past for a 501c3 corporation as the Coudray, our technical name is Coudray Volunteer Fire Department Incorporated, because we are now an incorporated organization, and zoning has in the past, for the one incident that I can remember, and there were others, was with the Hayward Hospital, 501c3. We forgave, I don't know, $8,000 or $9,000 in fees for rebuilding permits and I don't remember what it was all about. But anyhow, it would be very kind of you if you could refund our service fees. I have a copy of the blueprints, which also shows the lay of the land and what we are purchasing and a position of the building. If you guys need any of that, let me know. So I got it right here. Thank you very kindly for putting up with me, guys.
All right, thanks, Mr. Bassett. Is anybody out there that is in favor and wants to speak for this rezone? Is there anybody?
There's a
out there
hand
that
up.
wants-
Dee
I'm
Dee has a
here.
hand up.
I do. Is it okay?
There's an individual online by the name of DD who has a hand raised, I believe has some questions pertaining to this individual case.
Go ahead.
Okay, first off, can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Very good. Good morning, and thank you all for being there. God bless you. It's not a very safe time. I understand that because there are two
I'm sorry,
parts.
can you please state your name?
Oh, I'm sorry. Everyone calls me Dee Dee. My name is Donna Whitnick, and I own the property on the other side of Sawyer County Highway C, and that's why I received the notice. And I understand that at this point, we just talk about the rezone portion. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. First off, I am in support of a fire station. I think it's a very important thing, and these guys have worked pretty hard over the years. But I did want to voice a couple of concerns. If it's, if it were just the rezone part of it, I believe that for a conditional use, if we didn't do the conditional use today, that gravel pits are also a potential conditional use for agricultural land. So I just wanted to voice a concern that I would hate to see that happen because I've been through a lot with gravel pits. But as far as the purpose that the volunteer fire department want to use it for, I am in support of them, and it sounds like they'd be willing to work with me. I have some more comments when we get to that part. But I just wanted to voice a concern that if we rezone it, that it is for this purpose, for this particular conditional use. And also, we've tried to do a lot of investigating. There are several scenic easements along Highway 2770 there, particularly on the south side for the scenic Coudray River. But people have been pursuing that through the DNR. It is not a DNR easement. It's not a scenic riverway easement. It is just a scenic easement, and it's maintained by the Department of Transportation. With all of the complications presented by the COVID crisis, it's been virtually impossible to talk to someone from the Department of Transportation. So I just want everyone to be aware that there are almost all the adjoining property along 2770 by sea there does have a scenic easement on it. I did not get a copy of the layout of the land where the proposed structure is going to be. And I talked to Kathy this morning. I understand that they couldn't build within 130 feet of the center line of 2770 anyway. But not being able to look at the picture, the main way that it would affect this application is if they were going to build within 100 feet of the river or 125 feet of the road. I don't know if that's the case. I don't think it is. And that doesn't concern me. It's just something that might have to be looked into. I just want people to be aware that it might be there, and it is not a DNR document. It is a Department of Transportation document, and it was from 1970. So it's just something to have out there. I appreciate you guys listening to me. As I said before, I do not object to it. Those are just the two issues that I wanted to make sure people were aware of, and that went on record, is that this is for a fire station, not a gravel pit, and that there might need to be some more investigation into whether or not there's a scenic easement on it. So thank you all for putting up with me, and I will pass at this time.
Thank you, ma'am. Okay, is there anybody else out there that wants to speak against this rezone?
There is a few other hands raised. I saw Linda Zilmer's hand raised. You can go ahead, Linda.
Thank you. Linda Zilmer, Edgewater property owner, and I think we're still in the section of asking for people in support of this application. So that's why I raised my hand here. I do want to confirm that in prior rezones or even county property sales along the river there, this issue of a scenic easement has come up before. And also as part of history, I don't recall the situation with the Hayward Hospital, but I would ask that the county not waive their fees because there are costs to the county for publication of the hearing and other matters. And so however you decide the rezone or the CUP, I would ask that you not waive the fees. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda.
I have one other hand raised from Phil Neese.
Go ahead, Phil. State your name, please.
Sorry, my hand goes up. I'm in favor of this, but I didn't want to speak. I'm sorry. Thanks, Jerry.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay. Good.
Nope. No.
Okay. No more. I need a motion to come out of public hearing. Okay.
This
I
is
have a
Paulson.
motion.
I'll make a motion to come out of public hearing.
I'll second it. This is Pettit.
We have a motion already by Mr. Betcher. I just need a second from one of you guys.
I'll second.
Okay, thank you, Bruce. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries to come out of public hearing.
Discussion action for the town of Coudray, rezone number 20-008. Legal description is previously read into record. This request is to rezone a portion of residential recreational 2 to the agricultural 1 A1 zone district. This would be for an approximately 5.83 acres of RR2 to A1 rezone.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Now Dawn is up there.
Mhm.
We have decided that Tweed was gonna be in the meeting before
So-
that because she didn't answer. What do we do?
Well,
We can't have six.
Tweed will have to back down now that we have Dawn, so that we have our full committee.
You better know what to do here.
Good question.
Very good question. Okay, committee, any how you want to go on here?
Mr. Chairman, this is Paulson.
Mr.
I would
Paulson.
make a motion to approve the rezone.
Okay,
I'll second it.
okay, thank you, Ms. Pettit. We have a motion and a second on the floor to approve the rezone. Kathy, you want to do roll call, please?
We having
Yeah,
discussion?
Oh, yeah, we need discussion. Sorry about that. Any discussion on it?
I just have a question, because I'm a new guy and I don't understand the exact reason why this has to be rezoned to agriculture. Can they not build on it as a residential recreational too?
Right, that's, so within the zoning ordinance, specifically in the back of the zoning ordinance, there's specific zone districts in which you can apply conditional use permits for. And within the RR2 zone district, it doesn't allow you to apply for a conditional use permit for a police station or fire department. It's only allowed within the agricultural 1 zone district. So instead of going back and doing like an ordinance amendment to allow a police station or fire department in the RR2 zone district, which ordinance amendments can certainly take quite a long time to get formalized, that's where it was advised to the applicant to apply for the rezone and then apply for conditional use permit.
Okay, thanks. I didn't know if it was just to get a lower, tax rate or something.
No.
So that makes sense. Thank you, Jay.
Thanks, Mr. Betcher. Okay, any more discussion on this from the committee? Okay, Kathy, roll call?
Troy,
Aye.
Ron,
Yes.
Yes,
Dawn,
yes,
Jesse,
Yes.
Bruce,
Yes.
all in favor.
Okay,
Findings of facts, Bruce?
It would not be damaging to the rights of others and property values.
Thank you. Moving on, conditional use permit. This is a public hearing in the town of Coudray. Conditional use permit number 20-019, owner Bruce Jasic, agent, town of Coudray, Volunteer Fire Department, Inc., part of the southeast one quarter, the southwest one quarter, part of the southwest one quarter, the southeast one quarter, section 3, township 38, north range 8 west, parcel 004-838-033404, 0.89 acres of the total 22.5 acres, and part of the northeast one quarter, the northwest one quarter, section 10, township 38, north range 8 west, parcel 004-838-102101, 4.94 total acres of the 36.94. Both parcels were rezoned, or both parcels are zoned residential recreational 2 and Ag 1. See the rezone that you had just approved above. That is to rezone that approximately 5.8 acres to agricultural 1. This permit then is desired for Sawyer County zoning ordinance section 17.4, parent B, parent 3, for a police and fire station in the agricultural 1 zone district. As part of the staff report, the purpose of this is to build the town of Coudray a fire hall / station. Approximate size of the building was indicated to be as 50 by 56. With the proposed rezone, which had just occurred, the applicant would further request to be granted the conditional use permit for the ordinance section as previously stated. As per the Coudray Fire Department LLC's statement, the fire department is funded through municipalities and donations. The general response areas are the towns of Coudray, Meadowbrook, Weirgore, and other areas are routine. This building will be located on the State Highway 2770 for faster emergency response times. Neighboring property owners are aware of the plans and are supportive. The structure will not impact traffic, prime farmlands, runoff, or the general character of the surrounding lands. They request that the conditional use permit be approved with no requirements. Per the town of Coudray, motion was approved, signed Phil Miles, Jeffrey Honu. No additional comments, cited Charlie Warner, town clerk. Two opinion letters were sent out. Neither of them were returned. That is all.
okay. All right, I need a motion to go into public hearing in the town of Coudray for CUP number 20-019.
I'll make that motion.
Second,
Okay, I have a motion. Who seconded it?
Paulson.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to go into public hearing. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye,
All opposed? Motion carries to go into public hearing. Okay, Mr. Bassett, you want to say any more?
Mr. Chairman, committee, I said I kept it brief, but hit the high points. On the rezone, the same thing stands for the conditional use. I question though, sir, the gravel pit and the scenic easement that was brought up. Do I go into anything on that now, or do I wait after and use redirect? How do you want me to do that, sir?
If you want to go into it now, I'm okay with that.
Okay, gravel pit, I gotta be very honest, that's something I never thought of. And I'm 75 years old. I am really too old to even be on the stupid fire department, you know? So I cannot see in the future even, when I'm not around anymore, that anybody would put a gravel pit there. Coudray has enough gravel pits, and I understand, I know Dee Dee quite well, and I know her apprehension about the possibility of gravel pits, and I understand that. Can I guarantee there'll never be a gravel pit there? No, I can't. But believe me, I think this will be talked about among the other firemen, and I don't foresee it ever happening. That's number one. Number two, the scenic easeway. The first time Dee Dee called me about this rezone and conditional use, she told me about the scenic easeway, and I contacted zoning. I talked to Miss Kathy and Mr. Brown, and I'm not sure how they did it, but Mr. Brown called me back and told me that that proposed piece of property that we want to buy does not have that scenic easement on it. That's all I really know about it. It doesn't exist as far as I understand, and with what the zoning department said for us. And I would like to thank the department. They've gone overboard on helping the Coudray Fire Department get everything we needed on this for this project. And I want to thank the committee. Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you, Mr. Bassett. Appreciate that. Okay, is there anybody out there that would like to speak for this CUP?
I see two hands raised. I saw Dee Dee's hand raised again here first.
Okay, go ahead, Dee Dee. You got like 3 minutes.
Oh, that's not long. Okay. Thank you again. Again, the scenic easement issue, that doesn't affect me. That's just something for the fire department to be aware of. And I cannot stress enough, it is everybody I've talked to said they check with the DNR. It is not a DNR easement. It is a Department of Transportation easement. Again, I have no objection to it. It's just something for them to be aware of. And it's from 1970. I have not been able to track anything down to find out if it's on that particular property. I appreciate the mention of the gravel pit, and I do believe that if the town of Coudray Fire Department does get the rezone and the conditional use, I am not concerned about them putting the gravel pit in. It's just something I wanted everybody to be aware of, is that if it was A1 land, that it would be a potential conditional use, and we would address it at that time. Now, my main concern is I belong to an astronomical society, and the area up there is an incredible dark sky area. There's a group called the Dark Sky Association that rates these things, and they have what's called a Bortel scale. And up that scale, it has to do with the darkness of the sky and the quality of astronomical viewing. We rate in that area anywhere from a 21.81 to a 21.89 dark scale on a scale of 22. It's a dark sky treasure up there. And there are actually several parks and places that are designated for dark sky viewing. So my concern, and I've talked with Jim about this, and it sounds like they'd be willing to work with me, is whether or not the exterior lighting is dark sky compliant. He did put me in touch with Aaron at Hellberg. They said they do not specify the lighting, but I would request, and if it's possible, to make it a condition of the conditional use is that they use downward pointing lights that were dark sky compliant. Another issue is I don't know what kind of surface they're planning for the driveways and the paved areas, but asphalt would be much more appropriate for my concerns because it does not reflect whatever lighting that they have. Um, if they use concrete, it does reflect the lighting. Now, I am comfortable at this point that they're willing to work with me, but those would be two really, if it was possible to make those conditions, dark sky compliant exterior lighting and asphalt or a dark surface, paved, any surfaces that were paved to be dark surfaces rather than concrete. I would appreciate that. But again, I am not in opposition to this. I am really proud of these guys for hanging in there. And that's what I have to say. So thank you for putting up with me again.
Pete,
Yes,
for this?
we also have a hand raised by Dale Olson.
Go ahead, Dale.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll combine my comments as both the president of the Excellent Fire Protection District as well as the chairman of the Town of Meteor. And fire departments are like a net. They cover each other very well. We have mutual aid. And as a resident of the Town of Meteor and Excellent Fire Department, it certainly behooves us to have another department, another entity within that net. And this fills in a niche very nicely. So with that, I would appreciate approval of the conditional use with no additional conditions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Olson.
I see another hand raised from Phil.
Go ahead, Phil. State your name, buddy.
And it looks like he lowered his hand. I also see a hand raised from Linda Zilmer.
Go ahead, Ms. Zilmer.
Linda Zilmer, Edgewater property owner, and also have served on our Birchwood Four Corners Emergency Services District, which includes a fire department. I would appreciate that conditions be placed on this conditional use application approval. The dark sky was mentioned. I hadn't considered that, but I'm also concerned with runoff once there is a building constructed and there are parking and roadway areas. And it's, I'm unable to tell whether the location of the building will be able to meet the setbacks, but that would be another condition. And I don't know if there is a retention pond necessary to accumulate any runoff before it would enter the river. So I would appreciate if that is brought into conditions, that the appropriate drainage or water runoff collection be done to prevent the water from going in there. Many of you might know about the state issue with PFAS, and if there could be a condition that any training exercises that would be done at that location not use that chemical so that that doesn't have a chance of entering the river. And another learning I had from being involved with our local fire department is generally that dry hydrants don't work. And then also the water that is brought in for equipment, for tanker use, that water can sometimes be problematic to your pumps and things. So I know maybe Mr. Bassett recalls too that there was a difficulty with getting water withdrawn from a river for an agricultural use. I would ask that a condition be placed that the water to serve the fire department come from a well and not the river. Thank you for those considerations.
There again.
No. Okay. And no one else wants to speak on this public hearing for this Town of Cooter CUP? Okay. Need a motion to come out of public hearing?
I'll make
Oh,
a-
sorry. Go ahead.
Did I have redirect
I'll second it.
Just hang on a minute, Dawn.
To talk about the lighting, blacktop, dry hydrant,
Yes, you may.
et cetera, et cetera. Can I have a couple of minutes?
Yes, you can.
Okay, first of all, I talked with Dee Dee about the lighting. And that is the one thing I please do not make a condition on, because we have plans, and look, we're doing this project by project by project. But down the road to the west of the building we're putting up, there we're gonna have a heliport put in. And quite honestly, there hasn't been enough time since I heard from Dee Dee with questioning this to find out what the requirements are for a helipad for landing. We have, at this time, we have 5 portable, they're like a flashlight on a disc, and we take them out and lay them on the 4 corners to designate a landing zone. But down the road, we plan on putting in a decent heliport, obviously blacktop it so that the blades, the wind, don't pick up rocks and, throw them, whatever. But I do not know what the air flight choppers need for lighting. I don't know, and so please don't cut us off there. Number 2, the state of Wisconsin, the DNR still gives grants for dry hydrants. Enough said. Let's see, what else was there? Oh, and the driveway for the fire department, I suspect that someday down the road, there will be a blacktop driveway, but in the beginning, it will be just gravel or, earth, whatever. So, thank you very kindly, folks.
Thank you, Mr. Bassett.
There was the one question raised about the chemicals.
Oh,
I forgot the name of it.
Yeah, I know what she's talking about, and God forbid, I do not know the name of that. But there is a certain chemical that is used in dry fire extinguishers, and the fire department has used it for a foam application to smother fires. We have a tank on our engine that has some of that in it, and we are not using it, and we have feelers out on how to dispose of that legally. It's the same stuff that's in if I remember the reading I did on it, what's that coating in pots that you, Teflon?
Teflon.
I think it's Teflon. It's in Teflon even. And it's bad for the environment. I don't remember all the whatever. But we have some right now in our tank, but we have not used it, and everybody knows they can't use it. And we're trying to find out how to dispose of it properly. And it's so new, the whole project of that stuff is so new that we can't find anything out on how to actually get rid of it. So, thank you.
Okay, thanks, Mr. Bassett.
You have another candidate from BD now.
She spoke once. No, I'm not gonna, I don't wanna hear it, no. Okay, if there's no more out there, then did somebody make a motion to come out? I heard a second, but I didn't hear no.
I was
Well,
certified to make a motion to close the public hearing.
Could I just contribute a little bit more? Hello?
Yeah, I'll give you 2 minutes.
Okay, first
No
off, blacktop is fine. That's not a problem. Gravel's not a problem, and I really appreciate that. And as far as the dark sky compliant lighting, that would be for any lighting that might be on more often. I understand that if the helipad is in use, that's an occasional situation, and the portable lights are certainly no problem as long as it wasn't something that was 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. That's not an issue with the helipad. And also, I understand that if they've got a helicopter coming in, that might affect the lighting, as long as that were only when it was in use and not as a permanent thing. And for the other exterior lighting, if they could just do it dark sky compliant, and you can look that up online. I could send them links and things. That would be fine. Again, I do not object to this. I believe in the guys, and I think it's a very important facility to have. But I would like to, and I could talk with Jim about this later. I noticed that the presentation had way more information than I got in the past, and I just wonder if I could get a link, to those drawings and things like that. But I do not object. But I would appreciate if the dark sky compliant lighting, with the exception of the helipad or emergency situations, I understand that, but just for regular exterior lighting, dark sky compliant, and then
All right,
blacktop.
thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Yep. Okay, Jesse, you were making that motion to come out of public hearing?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, if I can make that motion.
Okay, Mr. Betcher's making a motion to come out of public
I'll
hearing.
second.
Dawn, are you seconding that yet?
Yes, yes, sir, I will
Okay.
second it.
All right, thank you. We have a motion and a second on the floor to come out of public hearing. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All
Aye.
opposed? All opposed, motion carries.
Discussion action for the town of Coudray, conditional use permit number 20-019. Owner Bruce Jasic, agent, the town of Coudray Volunteer Fire Department, Inc. Legal description is previously read into record. This conditional use permit is for section 17.4, parent B, parent 3, for a fire station. Per some of the potential conditions that I had listed in my staff report, as well as ones that I've heard here today, this is where this committee gets to either choose to include those conditions or to eliminate those conditions. But I had in my initial staff report that the size of the building be approximately 50 by 56, that all setbacks are to be met, including those that may or may not be as part of a scenic easement setback, which looking at an adjacent property scenic easement, that would include 125 feet from the center line of the highway, which our county standards would actually be 130, and 100 feet from the river, where the county standards would be 75 feet. There was also talks of downward facing lighting or dark sky compliant lighting. There was also talks about meeting all other county, state, and federal regulations, including those of impervious surface standards, which was talked about being near the Coudray River, and that if impervious surface standards were to go over the DNR's state standard of 15% of the land area, that the entity, agent, or owner may have to look at other routes as far as stormwater management. That was all.
Okay. All right, committee, turn it over to you.
I would just like to say that I don't think we should impose any additional conditions regarding restrictions on the surface of the driveway or dark sky compliant lighting. This is an emergency service facility, fire department that's in the business of saving human lives. So I think that takes precedence, just my opinion.
Okay. So, anybody want to make a motion to approve or not approve?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Okay,
I'll second.
okay, we have a motion and a second on the floor. Any more discussion?
And your motion would be for no conditions, correct?
Yes, correct. I should have clarified. The motion was for no additional conditions other than the setback and the size of the building that you have listed.
Okay. All right. We have a motion and a second. Kathy, can we do roll call?
Mr. Chairman, in discussion, I'd just like to say that I think most people are aware that Le Coudray is building a new fire hall right now, and it's been erected, and we're going to be in a transition phase as we move out of the old fire hall into the new one. So Le Coudray would welcome this fire department and to help cover the reservation. And we've always had mutual aid from Coudray and other townships around us, so we would be in full support of this.
Thank you. Okay, no more discussion? Roll call, Kathy?
Bruce,
Yes.
Dawn,
Yes.
Troy,
Yes.
Ron,
Yes.
Jesse,
Yes.
all in favor.
Need findings of facts from you.
Yep.
Findings of facts, it would not be damaging to the rights of others or property values. It would not be detrimental to ecology, wildlife, wetlands, or shorelands. It would not create an air quality, water supply, pollution, or dark sky viewing problem. And it would not create an objectable view.
Thank you very kindly, folks.
Thank you,
Appreciate
Mr.
it
Bassett.
Very, very much.
Good to see you again.
It is very different being on this side of that podium for the first time.
And it was good to see you again, Jim.
Thank you, man.
You bet.
Moving on, let me just catch up here in my paperwork. A public hearing in the town of Bass Lake for conditional use permit 20-020, owner Bradley and Patricia Herbert, part of government lot 3, lot 1, CSM 13/160, section 18, township 40 north, range 8 west. Parcel 002-840185312, 3.59 total acres, zoned residential recreational 1. Permit is desired for an accessory structure across a town road, which is Broussard Road, from a primary dwelling, approximately 24 by 30 in size. Per the Sawyer County zoning ordinance section 4.26 parent 2, the construction of a single accessory structure on an adjacent parcel divided by a public roadway that does not contain the principal structure may be allowed under the subsections by conditional use permit. And also 4.26 parent 3, that the construction of a single accessory structure on parcels of land that are divided by a public roadway and are defined as one contiguous tract of land by deed or survey map will also require a conditional use permit. Per the staff report, again, this is for a garage or accessory structure across a town road, approximately 24 by 30 in size. The property is one continuous tract of land, but is divided by a public roadway, being a town road called Broussard Road. It was determined by the Sawyer County Zoning Administration that due to topography on this property, that it would be a considerable amount of fill that would need to be added near the house in order for a garage to be placed on the south side of the road. This could have potential impacts of runoff with the amount of fill. Additionally, by setting this structure on the north side of the road, it would create less impervious surfaces near water. Per the town of Bass Lake, motion was approved, signed Justin Hall, chairman, Marshall Savitsky, supervisor, Dave Albert, supervisor, Don Adams, supervisor, Bob Hammond, supervisor. Per the town clerk, granting the conditional use would not be contrary to public interest and would be in compliance with the spirit and the intent of the Sawyer County zoning ordinance and the town of Bass Lake comprehensive plan, because it would not be damaging to the rights of others or property values. It would not create traffic or highway access problems, as the site is located at the end of a dead-end town road. It would be compatible with the surrounding uses of the area. The town of Bass Lake Planning Commission recommended approval to the town board, signed Erica Waschirsky, town clerk. There were 8 opinion letters sent out, 5 returned, all 5 with no objections. I have no objections. The LCO Tribal Governing Board has no objections. Board meeting held on November 9th, 2020, signed Nita Kemp, LCO Real Estate Services. I have no objections to this. With this being a stick-built garage and a cement floor, I'm okay with this being put up. J. Anderson Enterprises LLC. I have no objections to this. Just curious how much more area will be cleared than 24 by 30 footprint of the garage. When will the construction begin? Thomas Hobel Trust. I have no objections to this. I am the neighbor that shares the driveway with the Herberts. We have no objections. It is also our understanding that Bass Lake is one of the only townships that require this, owning property on the other side of a road and have to get a special permit. Gregory, this should be abolished. Gregory or Julie Dean. I have no objection to this. With this being a stick-built garage, oh, that was already read as a separate email. So that is all.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I need a motion to go into public hearing for a
I'll make that
CUP
motion.
number 20-020.
I'll second.
Don made a motion.
Oh, okay. We have a motion and a second on the floor To go into public hearing, all in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed? Motion carries to go into public hearing. Mr. Herbert? State your name for us, please.
Morning, I'm Brad Herbert. I live at 8707 Brossard Road. I'm here seeking conditional use permit to build a garage across the town road from my residence. My wife and I bought our property 30 years ago, and a little old resort cabin, and 6 years ago we took that down to build our house. It was at that time I really realized the easement that we have with our neighbors to the east really impacts what we can do there. And so the garage we have worked fine when it was a summer cabin, but now that we're living there full time, it's got 2 cars in it. And so we'd like some space to store our boat and all the stuff that goes with having summer place, canoes, water mats, and off-season, you know, my portable fish house and whatnot. So when you look at building this garage, there really is pretty limited on the side of the lot that is to the lake. The easement setbacks and just the topography of the lot itself, the house, the garage, and the septic that are there are on the high ground, and as you move back, the lot drops into a pretty deep hole. I would say we're probably 10, 12 feet below the level of Brossard Road or our driveway. And so the part of the lot that's on the other side of the road is nice and high, nice and flat, and I would guess that 2.5 of the, or 2 acres of the 3.5 acres we own is probably on the other side of the road. So it just makes sense to me to build it on that other side of the road. We have no problems with setbacks there. We'll probably be at least 60 feet at the minimum from any side yard, would be at least 100 feet off of Brossard Road. At the closest point would probably be 200 feet back from where the road crosses our property. I mean, we like having the woods across the road. So I want to put this off the road. I want to paint it or have it sided in kind of a tan and brown trim so that it blends in. I want to plant pines or whatever I can do to try and screen it from the road and make it as invisible as possible back there. The only thing that I've become aware of as we've gone through this process, when I filled out the paperwork, I requested a 24 by 30. I didn't take into account overhangs in that size. And in talking to my neighbors and my contractor, it was suggested that I should actually request a little bit larger just in case I wanted to make it a couple feet wider or deeper. But either way, it would have to be, or I would want it to be wider than the 24 by 30 just so I could have some eaves on the sides. And so, I don't know, it seems like a good idea to me, and I'd be happy to answer any questions anyone had.
Would you have a size maximum that you?
Well, if I could go maybe of the footprint, just 2 feet each way, 26 by 32, and then if I could get, you know, eaves, maybe so I could get 18-inch eaves on the sides, so you'd be a 29 by 34.
I would be kind of looking for, you know, the footprint, maximum footprint.
30, 26 by 32. And I think it came up at the town 16-foot height. I don't see that as being any problem. And
So if he wants to change that,
That's under part, excuse me, that would be under part of the possible conditions where, again, you know, per my initial staff report, those can be either changed, added, deleted. So if you want, this committee wants to make a change to the condition that the size of the footprint of the garage not to exceed 26 by 32, you can certainly make that change to my condition. So.
yeah, because I wasn't sure if we could do that. Otherwise, if you wanted to do that, we would maybe have to postpone this until next month. But
I do even believe as the agenda was published, I thought it initially said approximately, which that could be construed as still being approximately the same size, but that may be a question you may want to throw to legal, I'm not sure.
Rebecca. Can't hear. She's on.
Okay, here we go. Sorry, I had to
Did you hear
unmute.
that?
I did. Let me just, I'm just pulling up my agenda.
And in the agenda, it says permit desired for an accessory structure across a town road from a primary dwelling, 24 by 30 in size, but
Yeah,
the
and
question
what,
would be whether or not the committee can make the conditions that the size could be changed.
and what, remind me again what size we're talking about. It's a reduction in size, correct?
No, the applicant has requested that instead of the 24 by 30 in size, it would be 26 by 32.
26 by 32. Okay. I think, the purposes of the agenda and notice under the statutes is that it gives reasonable notice to the public. So even though there is an increase in size from what is being proposed in the agenda, I think it's still reasonable notice. So I think you can take action and change the size, even though the agenda says 24 by 30. Now, if it was a significant difference or a material difference, that would be a different analysis, but I think you're fine if you're going 26 to 32, again, because the statutory reasonable notice requirements are met.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, so when we go into discussion for that, then whoever makes that motion is gonna have to request 26 by 32, right? Okay. I just wanna make sure I'm going in the right direction here. Okay. All right. Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Is there anybody out there that would like to speak for this CUP?
No.
Is there anybody out there that would like to speak against this CUP?
Phil did have his hand up and then he put it back down and then he muted.
Oh, I got it up. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. May I speak?
Yeah, go ahead, Mr. Neese.
Phil Neese, Town of Bass Lake Planning Committee. One of the things we did when we looked at this was that Mr. Herbert, after he had an earlier variance go through, he realized that his size of his garage, having to do with the eaves, he hadn't thought about that. So he had just put a number in. And we came to the same conclusion that approximately, if it wasn't materially larger or if it stayed within the setbacks, of course, they all have to do that, that there wouldn't have been a problem with it. And that's the reason when we sent it through, we did not send it through with just 24 by 30 or something as one of the conditions that we would require. We left it blank. The one thing that we wanted to put in though, and Mr. Herbert has alluded to it, was the 16-foot height, which is our standard height for a standard garage, and he had no problem with that. So, but with all this virtual and hands raised, not raised, and somehow or another in the process, we did not get that in our comments coming to you. So I would appreciate that you include the 16-foot height when you get to conditions. Thank you.
Okay. No more hands? Okay, need a motion to come out of public hearing?
I'll make that motion. Paulson?
I'll second that, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to come out of public hearing. All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed? Motion carries to come out of public hearing.
Discussion action, Town of Bass Lake, conditional use permit 20-020, owner Bradley and Patricia Herbert. Legal description is previously read into record. As part of the potential conditions for approval, it was indicated and discussed through the public hearing process that we should look at implementing a footprint not to exceed 26 by 32 and a height of less than 16 feet, that all other setbacks are to be met and all other town, county, state, and federal laws are followed. That's all.
Okay, committee.
Mr. Chairman, can I make a motion to approve the conditional use permit under the conditions that Jay just read with those parameters not to exceed 26 by 32, which would be 832 square feet, and not to exceed 16 feet in height?
You can, Mr. Betcher. Thank you. Okay, we have a motion.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Any discussion? Okay. Kathy, roll call?
Troy,
Yes.
Bruce,
Yes.
Ron,
Yes.
Jesse,
Yes.
Dawn.
Yes.
Thank you. All in favor.
Thank you.
Need findings of facts.
Findings for approval is that it would not be damaging to the rights of others or property values, and it would not be detrimental to the ecology, wildlife, wetlands, or shorelands, and it would not create a traffic or highway access problem.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on, we have a proposed ordinance amendment change. This is a public hearing for Sawyer County zoning ordinance amendment to section 2.0, which would be definitions. Section 4.26, parent 4, which would be temporary guest quarters / bunkhouses. Section 9.21, which would be for land use permits. And section 9.24 for general requirements. The proposed ordinance amendments are in reference to the temporary guest quarters bunkhouse ordinance. The proposed ordinance amendment changes can be found on the Sawyer County Zoning and Conservation website. We are on version number 15. We had attempted to hear a public hearing last month, and unfortunately, when the publication had gone out, I didn't have the full red line version available on the website at the time the publication came out. So it's kind of decided on my behalf that we would hold another public hearing on this just to give the correct due process to anyone that would have concerns with these potential ordinance amendment changes. Again, through the entire, probably, what has it been, 14 months of crafting this ordinance, I do feel we have a very good and polished amendment to proceed with this. If there are any questions from the committee or general public, certainly help answer any of those at this time.
Okay. I need a motion to go into public hearing.
Also
For
move.
the,
I'll second.
okay,
Who is that first one?
Bruce and Dawn.
Thank you.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to go on public hearing. All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed? Motion carries to go into public hearing. Okay, anybody want to speak on this?
And I can give a little bit more, discussion on this. I had done kind of my version of a red line because, obviously there's some changes to our existing definitions that were done, some new definitions that were done. The meat of the actual bunkhouse verbiage, that was a new section that was added. And then there's some cleanup when I referenced 9.21 and 9. I believe it's 2.4. So 9.21, we've kind of added some of those other requirements that meat section had, and that's for that separate bunkhouse fire number that we had previously discussed. The 9.24, it's a new section that's added, but this is something that we've always given out to the general public. This is the general requirements for obtaining a land use permit. We used to hand these out as separate sheets. If I'm going through an ordinance amendment change, I thought this would be a good time to just add this section in there There's no wool that's being pulled over any eyes with the adding of this section. It's something that's always been given out to the general public. Well, how do I build a house? Well, here, these are the steps, these are the requirements. We wanted to just get that into ordinance form. And again, anytime you open up the book and start doing amendments, it's a good time to get more than just one little line changed in there. So that's what 9.24 is. But again, looking through the new highlighted version of what is going to be proposed to be added into the zoning ordinance. Again, if there's any questions from anyone, I would certainly address those at this point. And I do have a hand raised by Linda Zomer.
Okay, go ahead, Ms. Zomer.
Linda Zomer, Town of Edgewater. I have a couple of questions as far as how this will be implemented. And maybe I missed it, but did Jay read what the town's decisions were on these ordinance amendments? So that might be important for the record. The question I have has to do with, there are structures out there already that exist that weren't allowable under our current zoning ordinance or past versions. So am I correct in thinking about that as they are not grandfathered in, they're not legal, non-conforming, they were never legal to begin with? And then what will the county do about those structures once you adopt this ordinance? Thank you.
Yeah, and actually, thank you, Linda, for bringing that up. I do want to read the town responses into record as well. Before I get to that, I'll answer at least my intent from the other portion of your question there. Some of the intent of this ordinance was to facilitate those that are illegal out there, which again become that enforcement nightmare as to how to catch them. To get those to actually be compliant. Just because you make an ordinance change that now may allow these temporary guest quarters, if there's existing ones out there that didn't receive the proper permitting or weren't allowed prior to the ordinance being changed, they would still need to come into compliance and really receive an after-the-fact permit to allow that temporary guest quarters. And that is one of the intents of the ordinance change, is to get those existing ones to fall into some type of compliancy. If you have follow-up questions from that answer, you can certainly ask after I read some of these town comments into record. The town of Coudray approved the ordinance amendment changes. All existing bunkhouses be grandfathered in and not be subject to any of the regulations. All bunkhouses from here forward be subject to the ordinance requirements. That was signed Charlie Warner, Town Clerk, Coudray. Town of Bass Lake approved. Do you need me to read all the names as far as? Okay. Town of Bass Lake, they had approved. Town of Draper approved. Town of Edgewater approved. Town of Hayward approved. Future enforcement concerns after a 24-month grace period. Speaking specifically onto that, we had added language into the ordinance that those that are in existence, that they become compliant within a 24-month time period after the ordinance adoption. And if they do not comply with the ordinance requirements, be subject to citations and penalties. Town of Hunter approved. Town of Lenroot approved. Town of Meadowbrook approved. Town of Meteor approved. Town of Ojibwa approved. Town of Radisson denied. Town of Round Lake approved. Uniform dwelling code inspections should remain with the town. Smoke and carbon monoxide alarms must be present in standalone bunkhouses and temporary guest quarters. Town of Weirgore denied. Town of Winter approved. That is all.
Okay. All right. Anyone out there want to speak that for this ordinance? Anybody out there want to speak against this ordinance? Okay, if none, then need a motion to come out of,
Hello.
go ahead.
Phil Neese, Town of Bass Lake, and the process for this over this last year in the development of this ordinance, and it is much needed. And I really would hope that the committee would vote as presented to send it on to county board for approval. Thank you.
Thanks, Bill. Okay, if there's no more discussion on that, I need a motion to come out of public hearing.
Paulson, I move to come out of public hearing.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to come out of public hearing. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
This is the discussion action for the Sawyer County Zoning Ordinance Amendment, Section 2.0 for definitions, Section 4.26, Parent 4 for the additional added language for temporary guest quarters and bunkhouses, Section 9.21 for land use permits, and Section 9.24 general requirements. The proposed ordinance amendments are in reference to a temporary guest quarters / bunkhouse ordinance. Proposed ordinance amendments changes can be found on the Sawyer County Zoning and Conservation website. Discussion possible action to send to County Board of Supervisors for approval.
Thank you. Okay, committee.
Mr. Chairman, this is Paulson. I'll make a motion to approve the ordinance and send it on to the full county board for approval.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second on the floor to send it on the county board. Discussion?
I do, Mr. Chairman. I just want to ask, is there any budget impact with this? I mean, I know we had discussed earlier that Jay may have to add a person maybe to monitor or regulate this, or I know there's some license fees or permits that'll be collected. What is the budget impact?
Right. At this point, I don't see any additional staff that is going to be needed. Yes, there'll be additional busy work within at least the 24-month time frame, trying to, I guess, get a solid number on those that may be existing that haven't obtained an after-the-fact permit to come into compliance. But actually, on the other side of it, I see a positive side to the budget, and yes, actually obtaining additional land use permit fees with this proposed ordinance amendment change.
Thank you. Great.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Okay, any more? Okay, Kathy, can we do a roll call here on this?
Ron,
Yes.
Dawn,
Yes.
Bruce,
Yes.
Troy,
Yes.
Jesse,
Yes.
all in favor.
All right, as I'm passing that resolution around, I'll move into new business. This topic was asked to be brought in front of the committee for the campground that is on Cadillac Road. This is a situation in which a property owner on Cadillac Road by the name of Scott Poppy had initially wanted to add some electrical PEDs for some festivities and customer appreciation days that he holds out on this property. Those electrical PEDs were added probably without further looking into what implications putting those electrical PEDs up were. You know, from a zoning administrator perspective, just because you've installed electrical PEDs on a property doesn't necessarily designate it that you're operating it as a campground. When we look at the black and white of the zoning ordinance, the town of Bass Lake, which this property is situated in, has chosen option number 3 of the camping portion of the ordinance, which would be 6.73, parent 1. This is an improved lot. It does have an older farmhouse that is still habitable on that property. And when you have an improved lot such as that, the property owner may not store more than 2 camping vehicles on that property. Furthermore, the owner or guest may not stay in those camping units for more than 14 days per calendar year. And for special events such as family reunions, holiday weekends, etc., that property owner may have up to 5 major recreational vehicles on an improved parcel for up to 7 days per calendar year. It had come to the attention of the zoning committee and myself that there were some special events, customer appreciation days that were held that had over the 5 camping units there. So then we, looking at the black and white, needed to make some type of determination, maybe not a quote unquote policy decision, but to at least ask this committee, how do we find some middle ground, or how do we proceed with this situation? There's really 3 options that I see. One is, black and white of the ordinance, you can't have more than 5 recreational vehicles there for special events for up to the 7 days. 2, you rezone that property and apply for a conditional use permit to become a full licensed campground. Or 3, which is a little bit more outside of the box potential, but also within the ordinance, we allow for what is known as special event permits. These being a 1 to 3 day activity in which this committee, through a conditional use permit process, could allow up to more than those 5 campers. And I do believe that property owner is here to kind of discuss that a little bit more. But in conversations I've had with the town chairman of Bass Lake, they were considering allowing for maybe a biannual or even a triannual special event permit that 3 times a year, not exceeding 3 days per those 3 times, approve or at least hear a case for approval of a special event permit that would be valid for 1 year. And after that 1 year time frame, have him reapply and maybe extend it out to another 2 years or 3 years, basically just to see what this process looks like. The owner had kind of indicated that, there might be up to 12 campers there for a pig roast as a customer appreciation day. And he may do that over the Labor Day weekend, Memorial Day weekend, and 4th of July weekend. So we're trying to find some middle ground as to, let's be compliant with the zoning ordinance, but also the applicant or the owner has always, stated that I don't want to run a full licensed campground here. That's not what's occurred. And so that's where I'm kind of bringing this in front of the committee to see which way do we want to go on this thing. So I'll turn it over to the committee, as well as I do know the owner of the property is here. You can speak a little bit more on that too.
Are you the owner, sir?
Yes, I am.
Yeah, come up, state your name, please.
Scott Poppy. Yeah, I never wanted to run a full-grown campground. There's 12 peds out there. We were gonna put 3 or 4. Town of Bass Lake, well, I'm just hearing this from the worker at Bass Lake, talked to the couple of people on the board and said, go ahead, it's your property, whatever. So we ended up putting 12 electrical peds in. And like Jay said, we have a customer appreciation pig roast, usually in July. And this year there was 11 campers there. I don't charge anyone to stay there. There was some issue about garbage. I have a garbage at my dumpster at my house. I have a dumpster at my house. My brother-in-law has a dumpster at his house. There was some also discussion about septage, which I own a septic company. My dad has porta potties there. And everyone goes with their camper to do whatever they do with their septic, or I could pump it out with my septic truck. So, yeah, we do this maybe 3 times a year, 3 times a summer, I should say. And one time I think there was 11, one time there was 8, and I think the other time there was like 5 campers there. So, I don't know if you guys had any complaints or not, over there. We try to do everything social, kosher, whatever, try to get along with the neighbors. So I guess, yeah, we'd like to do it like 3 times a year. I guess that's all I have to say.
All right, committee, you guys got any questions for the owner?
Yeah, just the only question I have is, because we talked about, the special events, which would only cover 3 days. Are there any of these times when you might have campers there for more than 3 days?
The only issue that I see if there's campers there, if it rained a lot and we couldn't get them out, it'd be wet and I wouldn't want to rip up the field or get stuck out there. Otherwise, I don't see, other than my camper personally being there more than 3 days.
Right, and that's not the issue, because on that property, you can have up to 2 campers there year-round, and you can have guests stay in those campers for up to 14 days per calendar year. And at least from what Mr. Poppy had told me is that, maybe once during the summer, there was 3 of them there by accident for a little while.
There was 2 there, mine and my brother-in-law's. He is too busy to move it, so it stayed there maybe a week.
Right, and that would meet the requirements of the ordinance as long as people weren't staying them for up to 14 days. So, if we do a couple of, drive-bys throughout the course of the year, and there's, just 2 campers there, minus those special events, there would be no issue within the zoning ordinance. Now, if there's 3 of them there, then there is an issue with that, and Mr. Poppy knows that at this point. We're specifically looking at those special event circumstances, and whether or not we can use the special event portion within the ordinance, which does indicate 1 to 3 days. And this is something I would certainly like Rebecca to chime in with, but if this committee could make this a tri-annual special event, and through a conditional use permit process, grant a tri-annual event, not to exceed 3 days per event, valid for 1 year. After the 1-year time frame, to reevaluate any additional complaints we had received, the nature of how many campers are going to be there, and rehear this again. At that time, we could extend that tri-annual event out for 2 years or 3 years, just to kind of, make sure that this doesn't run loose, and kind of keep tabs, and having Mr. Poppy come back in every 2, every 3 years, and reapplying this tri-annual event.
You just like to get him in compliance. Rebecca, you got any feedback on that for us?
Yes, I think that, I'm just trying to pull up the other special events
It's
ordinance.
6.96 of the zoning ordinance references the special events.
Okay, I was under 6.7. Yeah, I think, under the ordinance as it reads now, the triannual events aren't specifically listed. However, I think that I think it's reasonable to read 6.9 in such a way that as long as all of the other ordinance requirements are met, that the specifics of what it is you're approving are flexible, that there is that discretion to add more, or to do this in such a way that it would be a triannual approval, or to make the approval more specific to the applicant's request. Again, I think, again, we have to look at the question of reasonableness, as long as it's within what we would consider the reasonable scope of the ordinance. I think that would be fine. I think we all know where, a reasonable line would be drawn if the event somehow became very large, or it was, expanded beyond the original anticipated scope. But yes, I think what you're proposing, Jay, would work. One other quick comment I want to make. I know that we're talking about a specific property and a specific use here. But just so long as Mr. Poppy understands that even though we're having this discussion, this isn't some sort of action on behalf of the county that is going to grant some sort of right or some sort of permission. The standard process you still have to go through that process. So even though the committee's having the discussion today, please don't receive this as some sort of approval on the county's part.
All right.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Mr. Paulson.
I have a question. Do we define special events, campgrounds in our ordinance?
So special events is defined in there. Special events do not include auctions or family gatherings such as weddings, birthday parties, etc. Approval must be granted by the Sawyer County Zoning Committee and respective town boards for any special event held within the county. Must be 30 days prior to the event. Then it talks about, locations, a site plan prepared with the following information: time of the event, type of event, location of sanitation, water, entries and exits, parking areas, garbage dumpsters, straight line distance to nearest property, roads that will be affected, food and beverage be sold on premises. Will there be overnight camping? If so, the provisions of 6.7, the major recreational vehicles may apply. So that's where, by applying for this special event, which is held very similar to what a conditional use permit would be, this committee then sets the conditions of what they want to see occur at that special event. They could certainly set the days of the event, the duration of the event, the maximum number of campers to be specified. They could put conditions as far as having proper sanitation facilities on site, to have garbage disposal areas on site. Again, it's held very similar to what a conditional use permit would be.
Okay. So Jay, one more time again, what are your recommendations for this?
Really, the nature of, me putting on there, one is Mr. Paulson wanted to discuss this situation, and two, I wanted to at least gauge the committee on whether or not they would even look at hearing a special event for a tri-annual event. Because if I bring this to committee as a tri-annual event, and either legal counsel or this committee says, no, we can't do a tri-annual event, well then that's the nature of the conversation. Yeah. Would this committee even begin to fathom to hear a tri-annual special event permit? The other route to go would be anytime he has an event, he's coming in here for a $350 special event permit fee to do this one time for 3 days. Memorial Day, 4th of July, Labor Day, every year.
I don't know, that,
Yeah.
yeah, that wouldn't be good. You don't want to do that.
Could I ask just a couple clarifying questions? So it seems like this special event fee, and they involve money, meaning that, you talked about concessions and selling food and stuff like that and getting paid to stay there or whatever. It sounds like you're not charging anybody to stay there.
No, I'm not.
You're not selling food and beer and whatever else. So this isn't a business. You're not
No.
making any profit.
No, I don't
Can you
charge
clarify
you.
who the actual people are in those 8 to 11 campers? Are they friends or are they business workers?
Friends and family.
So they're friends and family, so it sounds like this situation does not qualify for what you just read in the definition of a special events, because you specifically excluded family reunions, gathering of friends and family and stuff like that. You excluded that. And this is exactly what Mr. Poppy is describing. So I hear what you're saying, and if we're talking about two separate things, you're like, okay, we hear what you're saying, but now we want to discuss if we're going to do this tri-annual special event thing as a separate topic, then that's one thing, but I just don't think it relates to what Mr. Poppy is describing.
Yeah, and I would somewhat agree with that. However, there is no other exemptions for keeping that number of campers on a property unless you were to get some type of authorized approval to do so. Just because you had a large family reunion, you can do that, but that key word, at least in the definition, is no more than 5 campers. But if you kind of go a little, I won't say reinventing the wheel outside the box, in order to have more than 5 campers, you still could do the special event. But yeah, the special event does exclude, family reunions. So you kind of go back and forth and come into a big circle. So there's no exemption to have more than 5 campers unless you go through a special event. Yet special event basically states that it's exempt for family gatherings, weddings, and birthday parties. So yeah, it's a head scratcher for me too, because at one point, the ordinance says no more than 5 campers. The other point says, no, you don't need a special event permit if it's just for family reunions. But I would still say the black and white of the ordinance does not allow more than 5 campers.
Right.
Mr. Schuman?
Mr. Chairman,
Hang on.
why would we be doing something outside of the box? Why would we be looking at something like this, and why don't we just enforce our ordinances?
Well, we're looking at enforcing the ordinance right now, and that's where we're coming up with at least ways we can use other portions of the ordinance to potentially grant this. And one of the suggestions or the ideas that I had come up with was through that special event type of permit.
Right. So why don't we try
And
one
the
and see
special
how it
event
works without giving a blanket 1-year authority?
I didn't catch the first half of that.
My question is, why don't we just do a one event, special event, and see how it works, and not do the 1-year authority? And if it works well the first time, then then we can consider going to a 1-year authority, 3 events.
Yeah, and that's certainly an option for discussion that this committee has. The special event permit isn't necessarily to gain money for the department because you're selling food and beverage. That special event permit fee is to run a public hearing process, similar to a conditional use permit. So there are fees associated with publication, having the meeting, et cetera. So we don't make money in getting those special event permits. They're really just to cover costs to set that process up.
Mr. Chair.
And then to Bruce's question, I got to turn that over to committee to decide which way you want me to proceed on this.
Mr. Chair. Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
Phil Neese, may I make a comment?
Yes.
The special event 6.96 essentially was written because there was a bunch of music festivals in Eau Claire, and it was coming this way. It was a fad at the time. So to protect the county, 6.96 was written for special events essentially, and it was lifted from somewhere else, by the way, if I remember right. But I don't know how this fits into any kind.
I do. I have just a minute. I'm virtually attending a zoning hearing, but it's wrapping up, so I can. Yeah, I just got an email, and I have not had a chance to scroll down through all the pages. But did I understand that there's only something showing Pat Carlin as a beneficiary, and then nothing else, or were there other documents?
Linda, I have the floor.
I think Linda's not muted. I think she's talking about some different.
Okay. Hi, Rebecca. Anyway, I think, I sympathize with Mr. Poppy and what he's trying to do, and whether he charges or not under state statute has nothing to do with anything having to do with camping or a campground. In fact, it states that explicitly in Chapter 79 of ACTP. I can see why he does not want to actually do the campground route, because it's a little tedious. He has to go through a bunch of hoops. But just having been through recently the campgrounds in Bass Lake, which was a nightmare to begin with and end with, and the hoops that was forced for people to go through to exceed what the ordinance says, I really think we want to be very careful about jumping ahead. And I would like to see that at least, first place, there's going to be no camping going on now for a while, and that we really take some time. The unintended consequences is this is good for Mr. Poppy, it's good for Mr. Neese, it's good for Mr. Paulson. I think we want to be very careful. But in the same token, we ought to be able to allow people to do something with their properties. But there are neighbors to this, and there are neighbors that aren't happy with the campers there. So, you are making a choice here for a use that doesn't comply with our ordinance, and neither we need to. We are looking at currently the campground ordinance in totality, and maybe there's a place to wedge something like this in. I don't know. That's something I think we need to look at. But I would be very disappointed if we went ahead and tried to find a solution for somebody to, because our ordinance doesn't take care of it. We need to change our ordinance if we want to make a change. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jay?
I guess, Mr. Chairman, yeah, real quick, Jay, so you're just thinking about amending the ordinance to include triannual versus biannual?
At this point, I don't know if
You
I'd
want to
wanna
add
go-
that option, or what?
Yeah, at this point, I don't know if I'd want to go through an ordinance amendment, but it was just to, I guess, ascertain the minds of the committee members as whether or not you would even hear a case for a triannual. And obviously hearing the discussion here, there's a difference of opinions between the committee members. I could still propose this as a, special event, and per the conditions as specified on the special event, this committee can then make a motion whether it's for a single occurrence or whether it's for a triannual occurrence, and we have that discussion at a later date. But again, prior to me even putting it on an agenda as a triannual, I wanted to see whether or not this committee was going to just say, Jay, we can't do this, get out of here. So that was, again, the nature of just bringing it here for discussion.
Well,
Okay, then
my whole thought on this whole thing is that there's got to be something that we can do to help this gentleman with his property, where if he wants to have his family and friends there and do a pig roast, I don't see why we can't do something for him about this. I mean, he's not inviting the whole state of Wisconsin there. I mean, it's family and friends. They get together.
Right, I think one time a year, I don't think anyone would have really cared about this, but 3 times a year becomes a little bit more of a occurrence. Maybe that's.
Yeah, I understand that part, yeah, so.
It sounds like maybe we do need to discuss an ordinance change, because right now you're saying that it says for friends and family, if I have a family reunion or if I have a wedding in my property, I can never have more than 5 campers there, even for one night, according to the current ordinance. So maybe we do need to discuss that and changing that. Maybe keep the time frame the same, 1 to 3 days, but to limit it to
Hello?
5 seems.
Hi, can I call you back?
Seems like kind of a low number if you have a big family or whatever. So
Sure, fire
if
away.
we did that, then, it sounds like Mr. Poppy would be covered for what it is he's doing, because he's not charging these people. He's
No.
not selling, he's not making money.
Right.
So it's a friends and family type
All right,
gathering. It
enough.
might not be a wedding or a birthday party, but it's a friends and family gathering on his own property with no monetary income. He's not making a profit off
And
of
if
this.
we went to an ordinance change, which we certainly could, you'd probably still want to have some level there.
Yes.
Because all of a sudden you turn into, oh, these are 300 of my friends. And it can get a little.
Right,
Right.
yeah, you could still have obviously a max number. I just think personally it should be more than 5. And you could also include a number of times per year. Because like you said, I'm having a family reunion every single weekend
Right.
from May until September. So, maybe it's limited to 1 per month or whatever the verbiage is. But I think maybe we could discuss an actual change in that verbiage in the resolution.
Yeah, and I see Troy has his hand up here as well.
Go ahead, Mr. Morgan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I agree with Mr. Betcher. And Mr. Paulson. I think we have to follow our ordinances, and I think this would actually be a very small change, because again, the thing that's very clear is that this is not a commercial endeavor, and that does make a difference, I think.
So I guess I'll propose one other question then to the committee. Would you rather me come back in front of this committee with an ordinance amendment change as to allow these types of events with certain conditions and thresholds and durations? Or a specific change to include a tri-annual event as an ordinance amendment change. That becomes a little bit more sticky, but again, if we're opening up the book to do changes, yeah, I mean, we can do it in such a way and craft it in such a way that it does allow for wedding events or customer appreciation days or whatever the circumstance may be.
But I don't think we want to go that much of a route. I mean, he just says he doesn't do that. So, I mean, it's not only him, but it's probably the next person out there.
Right.
And I think I would like just go see what the first one you brought up would just do a little ordinance change, just a little bit of it to allow that. That's me. I don't know about the other committee members, but.
Mr.
I
Chairman?
see Bruce's hand up here as well.
Go ahead.
Okay, go ahead, Bruce.
Yes, go ahead, Mr. Paulson.
I think, aren't we looking at our whole camping ordinance and redrafting something?
Mr.
Yes,
Chair,
we are.
Okay, well, wouldn't this be appropriate to consider this issue as part of the draft? And I think somebody mentioned, and I agree, that probably the camping is going to not happen until maybe early spring or early summer next year. And by then, we should have our ordinance pretty well assembled.
Yes and no at the same time. I mean, the camping portion of the ordinance is kind of specific to, the campgrounds, which we were looking at changing some of the campground requirements. This certain circumstance we have in front of us had been indicated several times that it's not to be a licensed campground. It's, specific to these, family reunions, customer appreciation days, weddings, et cetera. So while they both contain major recreational vehicles, the use of that is pretty different. One being a licensed campground with campers being there seasonally over the year, and the other one being for a short weekend duration.
Jay?
Go ahead.
Chairman?
Yes.
Phil Neese. In looking at, there's a group of us that are looking at from Bass Lake, and we'll be coming with some recommendations to Jay on camping in general. And that other conversation, we did move on through to look at 6.96 at the time. And that there needed to be a little work done on that, because the way it's currently written and the general purpose of it at the beginning has slightly changed over time, and it has to do with camping. So I guess I would recommend that 6.96 be looked at because we don't want to be doing things just for one individual. It has to be equal for everybody, and it has to be the unintended consequences of doing it for just one, as sometimes turns out to be bad. So I would hope that you would have Jay look at 6.96 to go in with the other changes, if any, if you're going to do them going forward. And we got time to do it, is great news here. So that would be my recommendation anyway.
Okay. Any more?
Mr. Chairman, this is Rebecca. Can I speak to something very quickly?
You sure can, Rebecca.
Okay. I think that, let's just say hypothetically that Mr. Poppy came in and wanted to apply for, a tri-annual permit. And I want to address this because I know that the committee has concerns about what Mr. Poppy can and can't do with his property and his property use rights. If he wanted to apply for that type of permit now, I think he can. I think the ordinances do allow a sort of a tri-annual application. One thing I think would be very important in that application is allowing the county to revisit whatever conditions are in that permit at a given point in time. So let's say that Mr. Poppy holds his Memorial Day celebration, and there are issues that arise because of what happened at that celebration the county needs to address. I think if you structure the triannual permit in such a way that it's broad enough, I think the county would have the right to do that. Also, with respect to the family gatherings, weddings exception, there are other provisions in the zoning ordinance that reference family gatherings, but no more than 5 major recreational vehicles. So even though it appears that we have that, that kind of catch-22 in the ordinance, I think it's reasonable to read your ordinance as limiting the family gatherings by that other section, imposing the restriction on the number of vehicles. And so long as Mr. Poppy would be okay with that, again, I think he could come forward and apply for, that type of permit even without an ordinance change. Again, that's just a scenario that I think the committee and Jay could consider, just to make sure that there's no, significant restrictions on Mr. Poppy's use of his property, but while still operating within your ordinances as they exist now. That's it. Thank you.
What do you think of that, Mr. Poppy? Any response?
So I could come in and get a triannual permit to allow more than 5 campers? Is that what she's saying?
You could apply for one, whether
Right.
it would be granted.
Granted,
what
all right.
Potential conditions would be put on there, but
Okay.
yes, our legal counsel is stating that the ordinance would allow for you to do so.
Yeah, I'd be fine with that.
And that's
To come
also, and simply because the ordinances allow that, under my interpretation, does not put any, the committee would still have the right to impose the conditions as it see fit, as long as those conditions are within the realm of what the law allows. But even though my opinion is the ordinances could allow you to do that, it's still a policy and discretionary decision as to whether that can happen. So again, Mr. Poppy, I think it's really important to, the takeaway here is this is just a discussion. It's not any sort of promise or creating any sort of vested right on your part. But I just wanted to give that example again, if that is something you wanted to pursue and that was something that the committee felt comfortable with from a policy standpoint, it is an option, without an ordinance change at this time. And one of those conditions, or some of those conditions, you may look at and feel that they're too restrictive. Having the county have the capability of setting restrictions is a very broad authority. So simply because my legal opinion is, yes, Mr. Poppy could do this, doesn't mean that the county would be restricted in such a way from setting forth broad conditions to address all of these use concerns. And again, I would recommend if it is a triannual permit, that permit be structured in such a way that the county has the right to revisit those conditions at any point in time in which new policy or new use concerns arise.
Question, Rebecca?
Yes.
Within 6.96, it says that written approval from the town board must be obtained.
Yes.
And the town, so if the town turned this down, this would be a non-issue, right?
That's correct.
I mean, is that correct? I'm not
That
saying the town would probably a reasonable application or something, whatever, but the town has mutual authority in 6.96.
Yep, you are absolutely right, Phil. And so when I'm talking about the, the county having the capability from my legal perspective of hearing an application like this, Phil, you are absolutely right. It still has to go through the other ordinance requirements, one of which is the town must approve it.
Right. Okay, thank you.
I have Mark Olson has his hand raised here as well.
Go ahead, Mr. Olson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I had another question for Rebecca on this. Being this isn't a conditional use, but it's handled basically the same as a conditional use, does the law under, with the changes that just happened a couple of years ago, does that apply to this special event permit? Or is it handled totally separate like the old way they used to be done?
That is a fantastic question, Mr. Olson. And my legal opinion is that the county and the town should look to what Act 67 says about the restrictions on setting forth conditions in conditional use permits. Special use permits are a different legal animal than conditional use permits. Special use permits are not specifically identified in 5969(5)(e). However, the existing case law that sets forth the conditions that were memorialized in Act 67, I don't think apply only exclusively to conditional use permits. So to answer the specific question, I think you still should be guided by the principles in Act 67. So the standard conditions need to be specific. They need to be supported by substantial evidence. They can't be just based on reasonable opinions or
Reasonable
just
and measurable.
people's own personal opinions. But even within that context, I think that you, as the county and the town, can still set conditions that are specific to the concerns that are raised, for this potential property use. So simply because we're applying, or I would encourage you to apply the guidelines of Act 67, I don't think that it restricts the county's capability for setting forth the type of conditions that have been discussed here today.
Yeah, and 6.93 and 6.94 do kind of go over that in our ordinance, whether or not that it would comply with Act 67 or not. But and the zoning administrator's discretion find the proposed special use to be of significant concern, it may be upgraded to a conditional use status. And then 6.94 of conditions, the zoning administrator and or the town board may attach any special provisions or conditions to a special use application deemed necessary to further the goals and objectives of the ordinance.
Mm-hmm.
So I would hope that would cover it, and then you end up, you basically, it's viewed as a conditional use permit, really.
I think one of the the legal differences, we still have to recognize, though, the difference between a conditional use permit and a special use permit, even though the law says that there are no vested rights granted in a conditional use permit. I do think that someone could make an argument that they have a greater property right with the conditional use permit than with a special event permit. So even though I'm saying apply the same legal analysis to both when setting forth conditions, I do think it's important that we recognize the legal differences between the two, because certainly I think the county would want to be wary of going beyond what is its intention in setting forth a potential property right for that owner.
All right, I think I got what I needed.
Okay. I'm good. Anybody else? Okay, thank you, Mr. Poppy.
All right, thank you.
Appreciate it.
All right, moving on to new business, letter B, zoning committee rezone and conditional use permit procedures. I was asked to include this on the agenda, kind of sequence of events for opening of public hearings, closing of public hearings. I do want to commend the committee today. I thought we did an excellent job for the procedures. I know last month, I think there might have been a little bit of confusion, but this was kind of prepared to me by one of the other committee members just to kind of review this to see if this is the process that we want to use kind of for those sequence of events, just to kind of keep us on the same page and kind of keep us clean, well-oiled machine here.
I want to comment on that.
Sure.
on what Mr. Paulson has brought up here on the procedures is based off what happened last month at the zoning. And I take full responsibility for that. Somehow it got confused. It didn't go the way it was supposed to go. And what Mr. Paulson has there is the way that we have been doing it. And just the last month's meeting got screwed up. And like I said, I take full responsibility for that. So, but I'm okay with having each one of the committee members having a copy of that. But I don't believe, Jay, that we need number 5 on there.
Jay, can I speak to this too?
You can, Rebecca.
Okay, yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. Certainly last month was clunky from my perspective for 2 reasons. Number one, that unique situation of not holding the public hearing because the materials weren't published yet. It's a unique thing on an agenda that I'm not sure we've seen before. So I think that's where, at least for me, some of the confusion came in. And I think, you know, Mr. Chairman and I have also talked about making sure that, you know, the meeting is run in such a way where there aren't distractions. And I, you know, fully admit that if I get distracted by certain distractions, that's my own issue. But again, Mr. Chairman and I have talked about that in terms of what's appropriate conduct and what's not. I think that, you know, this sequence of events, it is important. It is an important guideline. I do agree with Mr. Chairman that I think we have been following these processes, and I know the committee has worked very, very hard, you know, in the last 2 years to improve its flow from a procedural standpoint, and I give you high accommodations for that because I think you have made significant improvements in how the meetings are run. The one thing I want to caution the committee on is this sequence of events. It may have to be modified, and I don't think the sequence of events as set forth here meet what the legal requirements are. So I want to make sure that everyone is on the same page, that what we see here 1 through 8 is not an illegal analysis, or it's not a specific directive from a legal or procedural standpoint. Because again, if that's what the committee would like, I can certainly put that together. I don't think it's necessary because I think you are doing a great job with your procedures and process. And also if you have counsel there, I can jump in and advise you. One other issue that happened last month, and this was also my fault for not identifying that we had skipped over something on the agenda, again, because of various reasons I didn't catch that. That's a key issue that I think sometimes causes frustration. That, well, why do we have to go back? Why do we have to seem to duplicate things? You know, we all understand the intent, but it is so important that nothing is skipped over on the agenda. We've talked about what the point is for an agenda is to give notice to the public under the statutes. And I think part of that analysis and part of that legal requirement is to make sure that every agenda item is hit. So that was my fault for last month for not realizing that we had, or that you had, and I had missed skipping over one of the items on the agenda. And then again, the resulting frustration of having to go back. But I think, you know, what you have in front of you, the sequence of events, you know, it's a good guide. But again, my most important recommendation is that this not be looked at as, you know, official binding procedures on the committee. That's it. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
So Rebecca, you're saying that needs to be revised?
No, I think if this is just intended to be a guide or a clarification in light of the clunky meeting last month, I think it's okay. But if this sequence is intended to be binding on the committee or official policy of the committee, then yes, I think it should be spruced up. And also it should be added to the bylaws because that is the bylaws. The bylaws are your official guidance for procedures. And that's why we spent so much time in revising and adopting your new bylaws, both under the ordinances and what meets the statutory requirements.
Because I see, you know, what this here, and except for last month, that's the way we've been doing it. Just this, how it is right there. And I believe ever since I've been, chairman of this committee, that's the way it has been done. I would like to see something, Rebecca, that what you, from your perspective, what you want to see. You know what I'm saying, on the sequence of events. I mean, I'm fine with this. I mean, this is what we've been doing. It's been working. I'm happy with that, but I want to make sure that everything that we're doing is legit.
Yep.
We don't
Well,
want
and
to
Mr.
go
Chairman,
back.
with all due respect, I don't think you need that from me. I don't think that you need me to revise this so long as you're not intending that this be part of your bylaws. If this is just a guide or kind of a follow-up lesson from last month's meeting, I think it's very helpful. But I don't think that at this point in time you need an additional legal analysis from me. Number one, because we have the bylaws. Number two, because I attend your meetings, I can jump in and correct things that are in error. Now, I understand that's kind of conflicting because part of the problem last month was my missing when we skipped something on the agenda. But again, Mr. Chair, you and I have discussed the, you know, kind of some of the backstory on how that happened and how to correct those, that situation in terms of why it was missed. Now, of course, I'm not perfect, contrary to what you all may believe. And I'm not saying that I'm not going to miss something in the future. But I think because you have legal counsel present at your meetings, it's actually more cost effective to have me at the meetings than to try to come up with, you know, a sequence of events that is going to apply broadly to meetings.
And
Mr.
I
Chairman,
think we need that number 5 in there.
I think number 5 and 6
Mr. Chairman,
Hang on, Mr. Paulson.
Yeah, I think
I'm
5
hanging
and 6
on.
are little flip flops, but go ahead. I'll talk to you.
Go ahead, Mr. Paulson.
I mean, I drafted the sequence of events, maybe a bad title, but primarily for my own use because, you know, I want to make sure I follow the proper sequence of events. And I've found myself trying to discuss something when the application is turned over to the committee before before Jay's even started to reread what he needs to read. So, I mean, I'm not looking at anything other than an unofficial guide to me anyway.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it doesn't hurt for the whole committee to have one of them, Mr. Paulson.
Okay.
Just something to go by.
Right.
I would use it, you know, and, but like I was just talking with Jay, like I asked him if we needed like number 5 on there, which he said 5 and 6 are, how did you word that, Jay?
I think number 5 and number 6 might be kind of flipped around because usually, you know, after we close a public hearing, I go into, you know, the discussion action. So, you know, zoning department, respective reads, pertinent information. And at the end of, you know, discussion action, legal description is previously read into record. Please consider these conditions. You know, I usually say then, you know, that is all. That's me turning it back over to the committee for your turn to make that motion and those decisions.
Right.
So,
I mean,
From a,
why don't we just turn 5 and 6 around and go with that?
yeah, that's fine. This is just a draft for people to pick at. I want to make
Yep.
sure, at least when I attend the committee meetings, I follow the right order.
Yeah, and
Right.
we'll go back and we'll look at the bylaws too, to make sure, that is how the procedure is specified in the bylaws. So we'll get
Sure.
we'll get her hammered down.
All right,
From a-
and Mr.
Oh,
Chairman,
I'm
I had a question on the poppy discussion.
Go ahead, Mr. Paulson.
Where did we leave it?
Well, we left it with legal counsel stating that it would be acceptable to hear a tri-annual event. And if the applicant so chooses to apply for a tri-annual event, this committee can hear it. In the meantime, we will potentially look at some draft ordinance language to, maybe allow, at least one of these, because there are those scenarios where people have large weddings or want to have a family gathering, and they may have 10 campers that come over there. Should they have to go through a special event permit for a once a year 4th of July reunion? I don't know if we want to get that tight on some of those regulations. That's at least what I kind of heard from some of the other committee members, so.
Okay.
That's where we
so-
kind of left it, is potentially coming up with an ordinance change for, allowing one of these a year, maybe even 2 of them. That can be a discussion through the committee. But also that legal counsel, had advised that we could hear a tri-annual event under a special event.
Right, so it's in Poppy's court, then he needs to apply, and until he applies and we approve, he's not permitted to do these special events?
That would be correct.
Okay,
Or unless an ordinance was to change prior to that, but I had given him that notice of order for correction, is that if there are more than 5 campers there for any time frame, it would be in violation of the ordinance without having
Okay.
prior authorization through a special event or an ordinance amendment change.
all right, so we don't have to go back to Mr. Poppy and say what we just talked about. You've, in a way, already told him that.
Yep, and if he does it without getting the proper approval, a citation would be issued.
Okay, thank you.
Okay,
Gentlemen,
yes, go ahead, Ms. Pettit.
I need to leave the meeting now. If we're not voting on anything else, right? We're just having discussion.
Yep. We're
All
just
right.
about done anyway, Ms. Pettit. You can
Okay,
leave.
I'm gonna leave. Everybody have a good weekend. Stay safe. Anything that is decided or I need a copy of, please email it to me, Jay, if that's okay.
Will do.
Thank you. Everybody have a good weekend. Bye.
Yep, you
Thanks.
too. Thank you.
Bye, Don.
Bye, Troy.
Okay. Any other business that may come before the committee?
Mr. Chairman,
Nothing? Yes.
this is Rebecca. Not to beat a dead horse here, but under sequence of events, that number 5 application turned over to the committee. This is a great example of how the language of this document may be inconsistent with the statutes. And if the committee is saying, yes, this is just a guide, or, Mr. Paulson uses this for his own reference, that's fine. And, to committee members, that point number 5 and point number 6 may be switched. But again, under the statutes, there is a specific flow that's required that does use the term turning the application over to the committee. Now, your bylaws and the binding legal documents and the procedure that you follow complies with the statutes. Again, I just wanted to point that out. So just making sure that there's a good understanding that this document can be a handy reference for committee members, but really from a legal standpoint, we need to look to your bylaws and the statutes.
Okay,
Okay. Jay, you're gonna look that up and maybe you can.
Yeah, if there's an order for procedure in the bylaws, I will be bringing a sequence of event that specifically attains to the bylaws. If it's, different than the one that's prepared there. If our bylaws are not within the statutory requirements, I would then request legal counsel to provide a sequence of events.
And they better be, because we spent a whole lot of time going through those bylaws, and if I render an opinion that those bylaws are not consistent with the statutes, we've got a bigger problem.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, go ahead, Mr. Paulson.
we have a draft ordinance, I think, that we're preparing for uniform dwelling code. I just want to know where we stand with that.
Yeah, that was kind of given to Rebecca. That would be held at the December committee meeting. That was brought up on the October committee
Right.
meeting to hear it in November, to provide, a resolution that would be given to the towns, as well as
Right.
that an ordinance would follow that. It was something that, I do not know the ordinance requirements of uniform dwelling code. That is outside my realm of expertise. Something that's probably semi-standard throughout the state, but and I would request that legal counsel would somewhat be tasked with providing those resolutions and potential ordinance drafts.
And
Okay.
Okay. Anything else?
That's good.
If not, we're adjourned.
Thank you all.
Thanks.
See you, Rebecca.
Thank you,
Bye, everyone. Have a good weekend.
Yep.
Bye, Rebecca.
Goodbye, Phil. Take care.
You too.